Before we get started, don't forget to like this video, leave a comment about which country you are from, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that touch your heart and open your eyes. Your support helps us continue telling these great stories. Now, let's listen. In the heart of London, under the grey skies that often cast a regal melancholy over the city, stood a man of pride, discipline, and service, Corporal Tristan Beckford. A Queen's Guard, dressed in the unmistakable ceremonial red tunic and tall bearskin hat, Beckford was a figure both admired and respected, a sentinel of British tradition. Yet, one ordinary afternoon, that sense of respect was violently upended. It all began with a small detour. Beckford, off duty but still in full ceremonial dress after a shift, stopped by a luxury car showroom, Crownline Motors, on the way home. He'd always had an eye for fine machines and thought he'd browse a bit. Perhaps he wasn't serious about buying. But he wasn't there to loiter either. Inside Crownline Motors, gleaming Bentleys and Aston Martins stood under soft white lighting, like trophies in a museum. Beckford wandered through the showroom with reverent curiosity, carefully examining each vehicle. He wasn't loud. He wasn't out of place, except for one thing, his uniform. At the front desk, a man in a navy blue suit, with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, had been watching. That man was Preston Crownley, heir to the Crownline business empire and an unapologetic snob. With a curled lip and a dismissive air, Preston stormed toward Beckford and demanded, "Can I help you?" "I'm just browsing, sir," Beckford replied, politely nodding. Preston looked him up and down, clearly unimpressed. "This is not a tourist attraction, and it's certainly not for men playing dress-up. Unless you're here with someone who can actually buy something, I suggest you leave." Beckford straightened up. "I serve the crown. I'm not here to cause trouble." "Oh, I know exactly who you are," Preston sneered. "You're one of those ceremonial puppets. Glorified toy soldiers for the tourists. If you want to cry about this, go cry to your precious prince." Those words cut deeper than any blade. Beckford, humiliated in front of others in the showroom, stood silently for a moment, then turned and left. What Preston didn't realize was that one of the customers in the showroom that day was recording the interaction. The video was uploaded to social media within the hour and went viral within days. The clip showed the whole exchange, from Beckford's calm demeanor to Preston's condescending insults. Outrage poured in from all corners. Veterans groups condemned the disrespect. Citizens posted messages of support for Beckford. And the public's fury grew when people learned that Beckford had served in active duty before joining the ceremonial guard. Preston, unrepentant at first, called the incident a misunderstanding and insisted Beckford was overreacting. But that only stoked the fire. A petition began to circulate, calling for Crownline Motors to publicly apologize and for Preston to step down. The royal household, always careful with public relations, issued a rare statement: Her Majesty's Guards serve with honor and discipline. They are owed respect not for their uniforms, but for their service. And then came a response no one expected. Prince Alexander, second in line to the throne and a known supporter of military charities, made a personal visit to Beckford's barracks. Cameras captured the moment he shook Beckford's hand and thanked him for his service. Later that evening, the prince released a short video. "I was deeply disturbed by how Corporal Beckford was treated. Let me be clear, there is no place for snobbery in our society, especially when it comes at the expense of those who serve us." It was a PR disaster for Crownline Motors. Sales dropped. Their social media pages were bombarded with negative reviews. Longtime clients withdrew support. Within weeks, Preston was forced to resign, and his family issued a public apology. As for Corporal Beckford, he never sought revenge. When asked by a reporter what he wanted to come from all this, he said, "I just want respect. Not for me, but for every man and woman who wears this uniform." The video that captured the incident now sits on a million timelines. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was a reminder of dignity, of class, of how society must treat those who serve it. And in a poetic twist, Crownline Motors, under new management, invited Beckford back for a tour of the showroom. He declined, saying he had everything he needed. But what no one knew, until much later, was that a luxury car dealership across town gifted him a black Jaguar XF with the words "for service and honor" engraved on a silver plate inside the door. Tristan had always loved cars. Since childhood, he was fascinated by the sound of engines, the curves of classic designs, and the feeling of speed. But one car had always held a special place in his heart, the Jaguar E-Type. It wasn't just its sleek lines or historical significance that made it special to him. It reminded him of his grandfather, who had passed away several years earlier, had often spoken of the E-Type. He never owned one, but he admired it deeply. As a boy, Tristan would sit beside him, listening to stories about Sunday afternoons spent watching these cars speed by on winding country roads. The Jaguar became a symbol of freedom, elegance, and memory. Tristan carried those stories with him into adulthood. He worked hard, saved consistently, and after 7 years of determination, he finally had £58,000, enough, he hoped, to make his dream come true. With the money secured, he arranged a visit to a prestigious classic car dealership known for its rare and well-preserved models. The showroom was quiet and polished, filled with cars that seemed more like art than machines. And there it was, an immaculate 1960s Jaguar E-Type, shining under soft lighting. It was everything he had imagined. The long bonnet, the soft leather interior, the rich British racing green paint, it all brought back the stories his grandfather told. For a moment, Tristan stood still, taking it in. A salesman approached, polite and professional. He gave Tristan the details. This model had been restored with care, its history was clean, and everything from the engine to the paint had been handled by experts. It was priced just slightly above Tristan's budget, but the dealership was open to discussion. They talked numbers. Tristan explained his situation, how long he had saved, what the car meant to him. The salesman listened, nodded, and excused himself to speak with his manager. When he returned, he smiled and said, "We'd be happy to offer it to you for £58,000. Tristan could hardly believe it. The deal was fair, even generous. Papers were signed. The keys were handed over. That day, he didn't just buy a car, he fulfilled a promise to himself and honored a bond with his grandfather. Driving the E-Type for the first time, Tristan felt something rare. Not just pride, but connection, between past and present, memory and motion. The road ahead was open, and he drove forward with quiet joy, knowing he was exactly where he was meant to be. Tristan had always loved cars. Since he was a boy, the sound of engines and the beauty of classic models had fascinated him. But no car held his heart quite like the Jaguar E-Type. More than just a symbol of style and engineering, it reminded him of his grandfather, a man who had admired the car deeply, even though he'd never owned one. Tristan had grown up listening to his grandfather's stories about the E-Type, watching them roar past on countryside roads, reading about them in magazines, and dreaming. Those stories stayed with Tristan. Over the years, the Jaguar became more than just a car, it became a goal, a connection to a man he loved and missed. After 7 years of working, saving every spare pound, Tristan finally had £58,000. It had taken patience and sacrifice, but now he had just enough to start searching for the car of his dreams. He made an appointment at one of the country's most prestigious classic car dealerships, a place known for rare, carefully restored models. That morning, he wore his clean, neatly pressed military uniform. He had come straight from duty and didn't have time to change. Still, he walked into the showroom confident and respectful, his mind filled with anticipation. The Jaguar E-Type sat under soft lighting, just as stunning as he had imagined. British racing green, polished to a mirror shine. With chrome accents and an interior that looked like it had just left the factory in the 1960s. Tristan stood for a moment, taking it in, heart beating faster. This was it. Before he could step closer, a sharply dressed man approached. His name tag read Preston. He gave Tristan a brief look, first at his face, then at his uniform, and frowned slightly. "Can I help you?" Preston asked, his tone polite, but cool. "Yes," Tristan replied calmly. I'm here to see the E-Type. I called earlier. Preston paused, then glanced at the car. That's one of our more exclusive pieces. Not just anyone can come in and ask for a look at it. Tristan remained composed. I understand. I've spent the last 7 years saving for this car. It means a great deal to me personally. Preston raised an eyebrow. I see. And may I ask, what's your budget? £58,000, Tristan said without hesitation. The salesman gave a tight smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. This model is priced slightly above that. And, frankly, we don't usually entertain time wasters. It draws a lot of attention, you know, especially from people hoping to be seen near it. Tristan felt a flicker of confusion, then quiet anger. I didn't come here to be seen. I came because this car belonged in the stories my grandfather told me as a boy. I've worked hard for this. I'd appreciate at least a proper conversation. Preston folded his arms. Look, I'm sure you admire the car. But with all due respect, we get people dressed up all the time trying to make an impression. It's not uncommon. Wearing a uniform doesn't change the price. For a long second, Tristan said nothing. He wasn't interested in arguing. He simply gave a small nod and turned away. As he walked out of the showroom, he felt the weight of more than just disappointment. He'd come with respect, sincerity, and real means. But none of it had mattered. What Preston didn't know, and never asked, was that the dealership had already confirmed Tristan's finances in advance. That his military service wasn't a costume but a career. That the uniform wasn't about attention, but duty. A few days later, another dealership, smaller, but no less respected, welcomed Tristan with warmth and genuine interest. The staff there listened to his story. They understood what the car meant to him. They didn't judge him by what he wore or how he looked. And when they showed him their own beautifully restored Jaguar E-Type, it was love at first sight. They agreed on a fair price, and Tristan drove away in the car that once lived only in his grandfather's stories. As the wind rushed past him and the engine purred beneath the hood, Tristan didn't think about the rejection. He thought about how his grandfather would have smiled seeing him now. On the open road, in the car they both once dreamed of, Tristan knew he had honored something far more important than a sale. He had honored memory, family, and perseverance. Tristan had been passionate about cars for as long as he could remember. While other children were playing with action figures, he was sketching classic cars and memorizing engine specifications. His favorite was always the Jaguar E-Type, not only for its timeless design and engineering brilliance, but because of its special connection to his late grandfather. His grandfather had spoken often of the E-Type. Though he had never owned one himself, he admired the car deeply, and shared stories of watching them race through the countryside in the 1960s. For young Tristan, those moments became memories tied to love, nostalgia, and quiet admiration. As he grew older, the dream of owning an E-Type stayed with him. It became more than a car, it was a tribute. Over the course of 7 years, Tristan saved diligently. Serving in the armed forces gave him discipline, but it also meant sacrifice. Every spare pound went into his savings account, until finally, he had £58,000, enough, he hoped, to finally bring that long-held dream to life, on his day off. Still in uniform, he visited a prestigious classic car dealership known for its high-end, meticulously restored vehicles. He arrived quietly, respectful of the space and the history it held. The car was there, a pristine 1960s Jaguar E-Type, finished in deep British racing green, with chrome accents and hand-stitched leather seats. It looked like a memory brought to life. Tristan took a moment to absorb the sight before stepping forward to get a closer look. Before he could speak, a salesman approached. His name tag read Preston. Dressed sharply and carrying an air of formality, Preston gave Tristan a quick glance, noting the uniform, then the expression of awe on his face. "Can I help you?" he asked. His tone professional, but slightly guarded. "Yes," Tristan replied calmly. "I called earlier. I'm here to see the E-Type." Preston gave a thin smile. That one draws a lot of attention. Especially from admirers. He glanced down at Tristan's boots. It's priced just above £58,000, in case you weren't aware. I am, Tristan answered, unfazed. I've spent the last 7 years preparing for this. Rather than engage further, Preston gave a dismissive nod. We get people in uniform sometimes. Photos, questions, but rarely serious buyers. You understand. Tristan stayed polite. I didn't come here for photos. Still, Preston made no effort to offer details or open the car for inspection. Instead, he stepped back, folding his arms, his body language quietly signaling disapproval. Just then, a small group of customers gathered nearby, admiring the same car. Among them was an older gentleman with a commanding presence and a walking cane. He had sharp eyes, a calm posture, and carried himself with the quiet authority of someone who had once worn the uniform proudly. He stepped forward. That's a Series 1, isn't it? The older man asked Tristan. Tristan turned, instantly recognizing the model. Yes, sir. 1964, based on the bonnet latches and the signal light position. Triple SU carburetors, 3.8-liter straight 6. One of the last before they switched to the 4.2 in late '64. This one's been restored beautifully, probably replaced the Moss gearbox with a synchromesh upgrade. Preston raised an eyebrow. The onlookers were impressed. The older gentleman let out a short laugh. Well spotted, he said, extending a hand. Sir Charles Wellington. Retired Air Commodore. Tristan stood straight and offered a firm handshake. Tristan Reeve, Royal Engineers. Pleasure. You know your Jaguars. I've been studying this model since I was 11. My grandfather told me stories about this car, he always dreamed of one. Sir Charles nodded slowly, his gaze shifting toward the car. A fine choice. I once drove one of these down from Yorkshire to London in under 3 hours. Still the best drive of my life. The conversation had caught the attention of others in the showroom. With renewed interest, Preston now stepped forward. I didn't realize you were so familiar with the model, he said to Tristan, a hint of discomfort in his voice. Tristan turned to him, calm as ever. I've been saving for 7 years. I called ahead, provided my information. I came here not just to admire the car, but to buy it. Sir Charles turned to Preston. Well, if this gentleman has the means and the passion, I should think you'd treat him accordingly. Preston's face tightened slightly. Of course. I'll check with the manager. Within minutes, Preston returned, his tone now markedly different. We'd be happy to make the car available at £58,000. We value customers with your dedication. Tristan nodded. Papers were signed, and the keys were placed in his hand. But the satisfaction didn't come from the transaction, it came from staying composed and letting truth speak for itself. As Tristan opened the door to the E-Type and settled into the seat, he felt something deeper than pride. This wasn't just a car. It was a bridge between generations, between service and memory, between boyhood dreams and adult perseverance. Sir Charles gave a final nod before Tristan drove off. Drive it like it's meant to be driven. And he did. With the wind in his hair, the hum of the engine beneath him, and the road open ahead, Tristan knew he was exactly where he was meant to be, living not just a dream, but a legacy. Tristan Reeve had always carried two things with quiet pride, his service uniform and his lifelong love for classic cars. Among them, the Jaguar E-Type held a special place in his heart. Not only for its reputation as a marvel of British engineering, but because it lived in the stories of his late grandfather, a man who admired it deeply. Even if only from a distance, 7 years of savings and disciplined military life had brought Tristan to this moment. With £58,000 in hand, he walked into Crownline Motors, one of the country's most prestigious classic car dealerships, in pursuit of a dream, owning the very car that connected him to cherished memories. He arrived in uniform, fresh from duty, unassuming but hopeful. The Jaguar E-Type sat beneath showroom lights, its British racing green paintwork gleaming like polished armor. Tristan approached it reverently, studying every curve and detail. Before long, a salesman approached, sharp suit, colder eyes. "Preston, read the name badge, can I help you?" Preston asked, eyeing the uniform with a hint of disdain. "Yes," Tristan replied. "I called yesterday. I'm here to view the Series 1 E-Type." Preston's gaze drifted back to the car. "It's not exactly priced for window shoppers." Tristan stood his ground. "I have £58,000. I've saved for 7 years." Preston gave a short, dry laugh. "Right. In that case, perhaps you can take a few photos and be on your way. We don't do free test drives for people in dress-up." "I'm not playing dress-up," Tristan said evenly. "I'm a corporal in the Royal Engineers." Preston's smile twisted. "Then act like it. You think you can walk in here, quoting engine specs and expecting sympathy? You're not buying this car. You're wasting time, ours and yours." Before Tristan could reply, Preston gave a sharp nod to the security staff near the showroom entrance. 2 men in plain black suits approached. "This gentleman is done browsing," Preston said. "Please escort him out." Tristan looked around. Customers stared. No one said a word. As he was ushered out, Tristan kept his head high. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. But something in him hardened. Back at the barracks later that evening, Tristan sat in silence until Major Whitfield, his commanding officer, noticed his unusual quiet. "Something on your mind, Reeve?" the major asked. Tristan hesitated, then shared the full story, every insult, every dismissal. He didn't dramatize it. He didn't have to. The facts spoke clearly. Major Whitfield listened without interruption. When Tristan finished, the major stood, walked to his desk, and made a brief phone call. "Understood," he said at the end. Discreetly. Nothing more was said that evening. The next morning, the polished floors of Crownline Motors reflected the usual sheen of privilege and prestige. Preston adjusted his tie, already preparing to pitch a restored Bentley to a visiting investor. But just before 11 a.m., the atmosphere shifted. A pair of Range Rovers pulled up outside. Out stepped 2 aides, followed by a familiar figure in civilian clothes, but unmistakable in posture and presence, Prince William. The silence in the room was immediate. Preston rushed forward, smiling too widely. "Your Royal Highness." "We weren't told, I'm here unofficially," the prince said calmly. "I was told Crownline recently had an encounter with a Corporal Tristan Beckford." Preston blinked. "Pardon?" "He's one of ours," Prince William continued. "A decorated serviceman. I understand he came to purchase a Jaguar E-Type and was removed from the premises. Something about playing dress-up." Customers and staff alike froze. "I may have misjudged the situation," Preston stammered. "There are a lot of people who come in, some can be deceptive about their financial status. And I'm sure you treat all such customers with equal condescension," Prince William replied, his tone steady. "If Crownline Motors is selling British heritage, it might consider respecting those who've helped protect it." Preston said nothing. The prince gave the room a final glance. "That's all. Consider this a courtesy visit." He turned and left without further word. News of the incident never made the headlines, just as intended. But within days, Preston's role at Crownline was reassigned, and the dealership released a quiet public apology citing a regrettable customer service misstep. Meanwhile, another dealership, smaller and family-owned, heard of what happened. They reached out to Tristan personally, offering him a restored 1964 E-Type in near-perfect condition, at a fair price. Tristan accepted. He didn't brag about what had happened. He didn't share the story widely. But when he drove the Jaguar back through the barracks gates, his fellow soldiers stopped and stared. The roar of the engine echoed across the parade ground, and someone let out a whistle. Major Whitfield walked by and gave a subtle nod. "Fits you better than that showroom ever did." And Tristan smiled. Because in the end, he hadn't just earned the car, he'd earned respect, not from status, but from patience, quiet strength, and dignity in the face of insult. Tristan Reeve had left the dealership the week before not with a car, but with his dignity, and that had been enough. For a time. But sometimes, when a man is wronged, the silence around him speaks louder than any protest. And when that man wears a uniform, it's not only his silence that is noticed, but what it represents. At Crownline Motors, the days rolled on in polished quiet. The Jaguar E-Type remained in its place, admired by visitors who came to look, not buy. Preston resumed his usual routine, greeting customers with charm, but always calculating, always judging. Then came the morning that changed everything. At 10:15 a.m., 2 black Range Rovers pulled up once again to the dealership entrance. This time, Prince William stepped out, not alone, but accompanied by a figure in full dress uniform, Corporal Tristan Reeve. Tristan wore no medals, spoke no words, and made no gesture. But his posture, his silence, and his very presence beside the prince spoke volumes. Inside, heads turned. Conversations halted. Preston, caught mid-sentence with a customer, froze. His eyes flicked toward the 2 men approaching. Reginald Crownley, founder and owner of Crownline Motors, sharp in a gray 3-piece suit, descended the office staircase, puzzled by the sudden silence. Then he saw them. Prince William addressed the room in a tone of polite calm. "We're here to clarify a misunderstanding. One involving Corporal Reeve." A mechanic, overhearing, moved instinctively toward the Jaguar E-Type in the center of the showroom. "That the one, sir?" he asked, pointing. "The green one?" Tristan stepped forward. "Yes. I examined it last week. I mentioned a few concerns about authenticity, specifically, the gearbox and carburetors." The mechanic nodded slowly, suddenly curious. He opened the bonnet and began his own check, speaking aloud as he worked. "Triple SU carburetors, but the linkages don't match a 64. Looks like a later mod. And, yep. Gearbox was replaced with a 5-speed synchro. Not a Moss box." He looked up. He was right. A murmur spread through the room. Prince William turned to Reginald. "So the car this man was accused of wasting time on, he knew more about it than your own staff." Reginald looked between the mechanic, Tristan, and his son. "I wasn't informed," Reginald said, clearly unsettled. Preston never mentioned. Tristan's voice cut through the silence. "Calm. Even, I called ahead. I provided my financial details. I arrived respectfully, in uniform. Your son called me a time waster and had me physically removed." Prince William stepped forward. "This man represents the very best of this country. He didn't ask for attention, didn't demand apology. But it's been brought to our attention nonetheless. Not for scandal, but for the principle of dignity." Reginald Crownley swallowed hard. "Corporal Reeve, I had no idea. I'm deeply sorry." Tristan simply nodded, then Reginald turned, face pale. "Preston." Preston stood stiff, his mask of confidence shattered. "Father, no," Reginald said firmly. "I built this dealership on trust, on knowledge, on respect. You've embarrassed this business, and you've humiliated a serviceman. You're finished here." A silence followed that seemed to stretch into the walls. Preston's face collapsed, and without a word, he turned and walked out. Reginald turned back to Tristan. "I know this cannot undo what happened. But if you would allow it, I'd like to offer you the Jaguar. As a gesture of apology. No cost." Tristan took a breath. "With respect, sir, I already found one. From a place that valued people before price tags." For the first time that morning, a faint smile appeared on the prince's face. He turned to Tristan. "Shall we?" Tristan gave a respectful nod. The 2 men left together, one a prince, one a corporal, but in that moment, equal in presence, purpose, and principle. Outside, the engine started. Two men, side by side, drove away. One in a royal convoy, the other in a 1964 E-Type Jaguar that roared like the legacy it carried. Not all battles are fought with weapons. Some are won with patience, truth, and the quiet strength to walk away, and come back standing taller. True worth lies in character and knowledge, not appearance. Prejudice can be overcome by dignity and quiet strength. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like and share it. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring videos. Thanks again and see you in the next one.